I spent over a decade studying business instead of doing business. So now I'm taking everything that I've learned and using it to help local home service trade owners improve and scale their businesses without learning all of those things themselves. In a moment, I will share what I'm documenting, what my goals are, and who I plan to help. And if you stick around, I'll also share the top 6 constraints that LHS owners usually run into during growth. So what am I documenting? I started a company called Lucian Creative. It's going to be a growth firm for local home service trade owners. And I'm going to be documenting what I learn, the work that I do, and the results that I generate. What work am I doing right now? I'm launching an HVAC RCL offer that's built around principles and tactics I've been lucky enough to learn from paying attention to people like Hormozi, Grant Cardone, Russell Brunson, Dan Kennedy, David Ogilvy, and Eliyahu Goldratt. Now, if you're an HVAC owner with 2 or more techs and can handle 15 plus kept service calls within the next 30 days, you could find out more about that by going to luciancreative.com. It's LUCIANCREATIVE.com. So what's the goal? The goal is to help LHS trade owners improve and scale their business without learning everything themselves. So how do I plan to do that? Plan to do that by providing easily accessible free resources that they can use that will benefit them, and then providing specific solutions for a fee, because we've all got to earn a dollar. Now, the core principle that has worked well for me is systems over passion. And from what I've seen and what I've heard by mostly listening to experts and people who have done the things that I want to do, is with good systems, even if you suck, you can still win most of the time. Sometimes, even if you have sucky systems, you can still win while sucking. Relax. So why did I pick this? I chose a market that I thought would grow with people who I knew I could help and who could afford the help. Blue-collar LHS trade owners who want to improve and scale without learning how to do all of every department by themselves. So let me tell you a little about myself, and then I will tell you how I plan to structure my future content for you guys, and then we'll move on to those top 6 constraints that LHS owners face during growth. So I grew up poor, worked in a lot of factories. Right? I did plastic molding, operated heavy machinery, I did some CNC machines, I built trailers and cabinets and did assembly line work, and I was a mechanic for a little bit. I was in the food service. I've had customer service positions, had a little bit of sales experience. I worked in distribution centers, packaging plants, some recycling companies. I was a janitor and a dishwasher at a truck stop for a time being. So I've had a lot of experience around a lot of different industries, and I knew I didn't want to be an employee forever. So that resulted in me studying business and finance fairly early on from the point of high school. Took classes in there. College wasn't exactly on the roadmap for me, so I did everything that I could to learn as much as I could through marketing courses, seminars, webinars, reading books, trying my best to be an autodidact, which is just a fancy word for self-taught. The thing is, the more that I learned, the more that I saw the amount of work that it would take to become a master of any one of those things. It would take years, even lifetimes, to become, in some cases, just proficient at some of those skills. But to truly master, lifetimes in most cases. And so, when I was younger, I thought that wasn't really going to be an issue. Okay, I'll just learn all of these things because I have to. Because how does anybody do anything in business if they don't know how to solve all of these problems? Well, they pay somebody, right? So I learned graphic design, SEO, audio engineering, music creation, filming, some photography elements, video editing. I may have said that one already. All of these skills that I felt were necessary in order to be able to just move forward. When in reality, you could pick any of those and just get good enough at that to where you could then sell that service to somebody. But in studying all of these different things, I became very aware of my own ignorance. I understood that there were levels to every game, and I felt surface level in all of those things because I would look at the experts, which, if you're studying anything and you're researching, I highly recommend doing that. Always compare and pull from the experts of an industry. Instead of, you could start with whoever you need to in order to get an understanding, but over time, always lean in on the experts because that's the fastest way to build any kind of knowledge and any kind of skill. So when I would look at these guys, I would see the discrepancies, and I just thought, how am I ever going to learn all this stuff? And then I realized from listening to people who are far smarter than I am that that's not the game. The game is to understand how to solve a problem and spot a problem consistently so that you can then do that for someone else, rather than trying to be capable of solving every problem that will ever arise independently by yourself, because that is high and nigh impossible. Even the greatest in the world build teams, and they do it for a reason. So back on this niche, the reason why I really dialed in on the LHS trades was because I thought if my father had ever started an LHS company, he would really be the target audience for me. It would be somebody who did not want to learn all of these different aspects of business development, but then would truly benefit a great deal from the information and skill sets, and would be willing to pay somebody because they didn't want to learn all of those things, or because they wanted those things to happen faster without trying to go through the woes of doing it themselves. So my core promise is that whatever offer that I put out into the market, I will try my very best to structure it in a way that leaves no doubt that whoever I am partnering with will get more from me than I will get from them. Because I truly believe that is how you structure win-win relationships, and those are the best kinds of relationships. And if I continue to do that, over time, I will win by default, because there can be no other outcome. If you're consistently doing the most that you can for everyone around you, it is highly improbable that you will fail forever. Now, for the content structure. My content will start out as general business knowledge tailored into the LHS trades. Over time, as I work with HVAC companies or plumbing, electrical, drywalling, landscape, lawn care, fencing, roof and gutter, mixed services, over time, I will then include specific insights to the problems that we solve in those industries, those niche of niche industry. Now, I won't just focus on marketing or sales. I will also include any data that I think will be helpful in scaling out the product department, so how to use improvement loops, or how to make sure that you're actually listening to your customers so you can dial in what you're doing, how to make sure that you properly place and position your offer and pricing so you're not leaving money on the table and you're not backing yourself into a corner. We'll talk about that. And marketing itself, sales, customer service, recruiting, human resources, a little bit of legal, finance, specifically tax efficiencies, because I know that every industry benefits greatly from just understanding the Internal Revenue Code and knowing line by line how much you can actually deduct based off what, to make sure that we're not just giving the government our money, because we don't want to give the government our money. So it sounds pretty on paper, but now we're at the moment where you have to ask, can I actually help you? And for my first of many attempts, I will now go over the top 6 constraints that LHS trades typically run into during growth. Number 1 is your offer and pricing. This means if you had 10x the leads that you have now tomorrow, the business still wouldn't make very much money because of how you package and price your services. So these can quickly drop your profit margins. If you're improperly priced or you have a terrible offer, meaning that you're just not presenting it the right way, because you can have good work and good services but not presented the right way to your customers, can result low profit margins. And if any of you are dealing with that, this is probably why. If you're busy but broke, the vans are out, the phones are ringing, but the take home seems low relative to the work, If your ads don't work, if you've tried Google and social media ads and they seem expensive because your 30 to 60 day profit per customer is low, so you can't outspend your competitors, potentially an offer and pricing. If you have constant price pressure and your customers are constantly trying to price shop and compare what you've got to your competitors line by line, if you have generic time-based offers rather than outcomes, so if you say X hours of cleaning or X hours of handyman service compared to an outcome-based offer, if each new truck or tech or territory adds complexity to what you're doing, but it doesn't actually give you more take home, these are all signs of an offer or pricing constraint. You may say yes to almost any job just to keep the schedule full or discount on the spot to win the job, but ultimately you'll probably avoid looking at true profit after drive time and overhead and admin, or if you can't afford to pay great techs because your margins are thin. These are all offer and pricing issues. The good news is there is a simple fix for this, and it's a principle called a Grand Slam offer, which is a term that I first heard from Alex Hormozi, who, if I recall, he had heard the term from Jeff Bezos, but he actually wrote a book on this, Alex Hormozi did, called $100 million offers, which is the concept of making offers so good people feel stupid saying no. And if you have not read this book, or if you have not heard of Alex Hormozi, I would highly recommend that you look him up and you check out these books that he's written, because I believe there's 3 in the series now, and absolutely phenomenal for business owners. If you're a business owner and you're not checking in with that guy, you're falling behind. Now for the fix. People don't buy things for what they are. They buy things for what they perceive them to be. Context and framing change willingness to pay. So, pick the outcome and not the labor. So for each trade, pick a clear outcome-based offer. For HVAC or plumbing or electrical, you could think something like whole home comfort and safety with 0 surprise breakdowns. That's what you're selling. You're not selling the time and the materials. You're selling the security. You're selling the feeling. You're selling the idea, the outcome that they're going to get. That when you go and do these things, your whole home is taken care of. You don't have to ever worry about anything with your pipes again. Your pipes are going to be taken care of. You're not going to have any surprise breakdowns. If the unforeseeable happens, we'll be there on the spot ready to help you. You don't have to lift a finger with this. This isn't your problem anymore. That's why you paid us. You don't have to worry about these things. For roofing and gutter or fencing, exterior that never embarrasses and protects the house. For landscape or lawn care, best yard on the block all year without lifting a finger. So your job is to increase the value gap. Your job is to take the services that you're providing and making the customer feel like it's a $10,000 value that they're getting for 10% of the price, or whatever your real numbers are. Then you take that and you bundle it into a package name. So for HVAC, that might be the Total Home Comfort Replacement Package, with the new units and permits and old unit haul away, smart thermostat and duct inspection, first year maintenance included, and priority emergency response for the first 12 months. For roof and gutter, the leak-proof roof and gutter system, tear-off, underlayment, ice and water shield, gutters and guards, plus the photo report, wind and hail documentation, and a 10-year workmanship warranty. Right? You have to package these things, and then you name them something pretty. It makes it easier for you to present it as something aside from the competition of price that you have with everybody else. For landscape and lawn care, curb appeal makeover and care plan. And so you may include one-time design and install, 12 months of maintenance visits, and have seasonal cleanups baked into the package, to the offer. Same idea for plumbing repipe or electrical, down the list. You're just taking these services and stacking them in a way to where if you were looking at it, you'd say, that's a damn good deal. Next concept of this is you price for profit, not for popularity. And so that means you price to make the most money over the customer's life and not to have the most first-time sales. Charge a premium so you have the margin to over-deliver on your services and create an experience that can help you Generate emotional loyalty. Set a premium flat rate versus your real costs. Include your diagnostic and estimate time in the package so you stop giving those things away for free. And never negotiate price. Only change the scope or the terms. So you may be able to have some kind of a downsell where you do less, or if you provide a payment plan, but never actually try to change the price for the customer. Then you add a simple, bold guarantee: on time, on budget, or we credit you X%. Bear with me. If it leaks or falls in the first year, we replace it for free and give you X amount for your trouble. Right? Something that stands out. So it is something that actually differentiates you. Right? It's not putting yourself in a position where you're going to collapse your business. But if you can, if you're a roofer and you do quality work and that roof is going to last 10 years, is there really a reason why you can't say, if it fails and falls in the first year and it's our fault, not to say they dropped a truck on the top of their house, right? Because that's not your fault. But if it's something to do with your workmanship, why can't you have that offer there? And people just don't say these things. And so that will take you from a price-driven decision to a value-driven decision. And that's all we want. Because when we have that concept, that's where the customer can come in, say, yeah, but your competitor, he charges X amount. And you can say, yeah, they do, but they don't do what we do. If you want to pay that amount, you can go with them. That's up to you, because they're not actually selling the same thing. Even if they're doing the same work, they're not selling the same thing. And that's the principle. That's how they get you. When you actually are selling the same thing, if it's just hour by hour and there's not a huge discrepancy of quality, then you really can just go with the cheapest person every time. That's our job. Our job is to make sure that we do create a huge discrepancy in quality, as much as we possibly can for anybody that we're competing with. That is how you win. But the core principle that helps you in this position is just making the offer and pricing based to make sure that you actually make profit and that it's on an outcome and not simply what you're paying for your materials and labor. Number 2 will be a lead volume constraint. Yes, a lead volume constraint, which means you don't have a reliable acquisition engine. That's what that means. And so, how you can spot this? You don't have reliable, predictable demand. Work comes in waves. That could look like very busy peak seasons and then very slow shoulder months. Or it could look like you mainly rely on referral bursts rather than consistent jobs. For roofing and landscape, stuff like that, you could be relying on HOAs or bad weather, storms and stuff to get more work drummed up rather than controllable taps. And so a lot of times the owner might say, well, we grow by word of mouth, but they don't have any way to actually see how many lead actions did we do today. Did we do outbound calls? How many customers did we call? Did we do any seeking? Did we run any money on paid ads? Did we create any content? Did we try to do anything to actually drive demand rather than expecting it to naturally occur? Right? Because a lot of people behave that way. They expect it to naturally occur, and that's silly. Our job is to go and drive the traffic. So, why this matters? Rory Sutherland, who is the vice chairman of Ogilvy UK and an absolute savage of behavioral psychology, talks about the concepts of mental availability and visibility driving choice, not just being good. Prospects need multiple touch points with you. They need to see you. They need repeat exposure. Random bits of work don't drive the decision. They don't change their perception. And that's what we need to do. And a quote by Grant Cardone on this: you need to be obsessed with outreach because waiting doesn't work. And I love that quote. You need to be obsessed with outreach because waiting doesn't work. The fix for this is the rule of 100, which is 100 lead actions, 100 days. And so whatever you're going to pick, whether that's 100 minutes of content or 100 cold calls or 100 DMs, 100 text messages, or $100 on paid ads. You just have to be, this is an action. This is something that you can literally just hit with a hammer and do it. It's a volume issue. And so all you need to do is hold yourself to that fire 100 times every day. Or if you have the team, implement the team to do this too. Hey, every day, 100 actions, 100 actions, 100 actions. And if you do have a team, you're just multiplying your outcome. So if you're doing 100 cold calls, and then you've got a team, and 3 more people are doing 100 cold calls, you're doing 400 cold calls a day, which is beautiful. So do that. And if you're doing the paid ads route and you're struggling with your keywords, you can check out some tools, Uber Suggest and Answer the Public, which are softwares created by Neil Patel to help with keyword research. Very effective, and I believe both of those have, I'm not affiliated with none of that, but they're free plans that you can use that will help. Now, if you're doing the content side of things, right, that could just be 100 minutes of before and after photos, job site reviews, you name it. Then nurture relentlessly. Every form, every LSA, every missed call. Follow up immediately. Speed to lead matters. We know this for a fact. Multiple contacts, SMS, email, call until they schedule. Now, if they tell you to stop, then stop. But these concepts create mental availability and ongoing relationships. So you don't rely on randomness, you build ongoing momentum and you generate demand. And that's what we're supposed to do. Conversion constraint, number 3. So you generate leads, but most estimates never close, right? It's the same, so you could get a lot of quotes, but then you're letting them fall through the cracks. You have a lot of people reaching out to you, and then you never see them again. Now, typically, an owner might feel like they're just price shopping, but some signs to this too would be that you have no upsell, you have no downsell, you have no continuity, and you probably have poor follow-up, if any. And I'm not bad-mouthing you. I'm just trying to be objective to help you see what the issues probably are. Because most of the time when we're there, if we have the problem, we just don't see it. Or we see it and we know it, and we know that we should do it, but we don't actually do it. So if that's you, and you know it's a problem, fix your problem. So, why does it happen? Well, Dan Kennedy talks about this, right? People don't buy products, they buy perceived value. Without a structured sale process, they're not convinced of value before they see price. And if you aren't closing, you aren't really selling. Now, people don't decide on logic alone. They need context and reassurance. Weak money models and weak sales scripts give you weak closes. So the fix would be one money model and one in-home script. And what is a money model? Well, if you remember that guy Alex that I was talking about earlier, he actually wrote a book on this too. And when he launched it, he made over $100 million in a weekend and broke 2 Guinness Book World Records. Pretty cool stuff. Pretty epic. So if you're on the fence about checking that guy out, go do it. And also read this book. I believe, I think he's got courses on this stuff too at acquisition.com. There's a courses section, and I think he'll walk through all of this. But the baseline here is you're going to have an attraction model, right? You're going to have an attraction offer, something to get them in the door. You're going to push that forward into the upsell, which is going to be your dream outcome, right? That's going to be the offer that you built for the number 1 constraint, right? Outcome based and not price driven. And then from there, you have a downsell option, which could be a payment plan, right? Changing scope or terms, like we talked about earlier, not here's 50% off because you're a great guy. And then from that point, you go to the continuity offer, which is just how to keep recurring customers. And that's the money model right there. Attraction, upsell, downsell, continuity. Boom. And then you have one in-home script. So you could drill these guys, make sure that they can remember that, right? So for an LHS, the attraction might be a tune-up. It might be a free diagnostic check. It could be an electrical safety check. And now I know earlier I'd mentioned, right, about putting that diagnostic and estimate inside of the offer. And now I said, oh, well, maybe that's going to be your attraction offer. And you're like, well, Lucas, how are you going to tell me to do that? And then this minute you're telling me to do something different. Well, you could also just roll those. So you have it as a low cost, right, as your attraction offer. And then part of the upsell would be that, hey, we take that cost, and let's say it was $100, and we roll that in to your upsell, to your outcome. That way you do have it packaged with it. You're like, well, this actually does come with that, so then we include it. So you don't have to. And then, if the attraction doesn't work that time and you're going to switch to a follow-up sequence where you're going to be reaching back out to them, then you can also just have that $100 that paid for your driver to get over there. On the upsell portion, that's what you'd have, the full system replacement or the full exterior paint or the yard care, whatever you built in your offer. Then on the downsell section, you would have partial work or repair work or just a change of scope and terms, like we spoke about. And I say that scope and terms again because a lot of owners will hear this information, but then they still keep doing the same things that they were doing. So they don't get the reward from changing the behavior in order to actually stop discounting on price and change to doing scope and terms, which can be a huge reward. If you're consistently giving out 30 to 50% discounts because you're trying to win jobs and you change the model of how you do that, that 30 to 50%, even if you do it on 30% of your jobs, right? That income goes directly back to you. It's a far better way to do it. And then you have the continuity and recurring model, which could be memberships, maintenance plans, seasonal care, and these things just increase customer lifetime value. Then you diagnose and run with that script, right? You show photos. You have the options of good, better, best. We know that matters and we know that it works, so do that. Always have 3 options, good, better, best. Anchor high and show via proof. Ask for the decision today with financing if need be, and do not negotiate price, scope, and terms. And this takes you to a point where you are presenting certainty and options. Number 4, the proof and reputation constraint. Your online presence might not reflect how good you are. You lose jobs because you don't look safer or more credible than some of your competitors, even if you are. And this is actually the problem that I'm addressing right now. Because I'm just starting, I have no proof. So there's no reason why anybody should believe what I'm saying, which is why I try to credit principles and strategies to the experts, for one point, and it's also why I'm doing content. And I'll tell you what made me realize that I needed to do this. So I was speaking with a business owner, and he's in the e-com space, and he'd been around the block, so to speak. He'd went over 7 figures on multiple brands, if I'm remembering correctly, and we were having a conversation about lead magnets and email marketing. And while I was explaining, he had stopped me, and he said something, I believe it was, I don't know who you're quoting, but I've tried this before. And I remember in the moment, I was very confused because I just didn't know what to say because I wasn't quoting anybody. And as I was thinking about that later, I was like, oh, well, that does make sense because we had talked before and he knew that I actually hadn't done anything. I just did a lot of research. I was just studying a lot of things. So he had no reason to believe that I had any idea of what I was talking about. And that was my fault. And so that drove this home for me. And ultimately, that's what made me decide to start doing content so I could start building proof and reputation. Now, you may be in the same situation, but the difference is you are already doing great work. So you just need to have a system so you can capture those job stories and turn that into social proof. And so how does that show up? That might be under 4.7 stars or under 100 reviews. If the neighbors say they never heard of you, or if you're losing to big brands with reviews and social proof. And that could be one that's hard to point, but ultimately, if you're looking at you have less than 100 reviews, under 4.7 stars, then it's probably a social proof problem because you can fix that pretty easily if you're doing the work. So if you know you do high quality work, your customers don't see it before they choose, that's a gap. And why this matters. Perception often overpowers reality. If someone feels safe with you, they're more likely to buy. David Ogilvy said, "The consumer is not a moron. They are your wife." And the first book that I ever read on advertising, about 8 years ago in a public library, was called How to Advertise by Kenneth Roman and Jane Maas, which covers a lot of David Ogilvy's philosophies around advertisement. One of my favorite concepts that they emphasize in that book is the advertiser's responsibility, which would be you or whoever does your marketing, is to provide substantive, factual data for the consumer to make an informed decision rather than rely on flatulent puffery. Consumers need trust cues, not just logos. Now, if that sounds like mumbo jumbo to you, here's another way to say it. Tell the truth and give details. Who's it for? What problem do you solve? How do you do it? Are your materials better? Are you faster? Do you have more experience? Do you smell better? Is your team more polite? Tell them every little thing that you think would matter from the solution. How long they wait for you to get there. Everything they get. What's it made of? Why do you pick that material? Answer every question you would ask. Ask your best techs the questions that they would ask and answer those too. Then do the same thing for the experience of the solution that the customer would have. Our techs use soap. They're professional. They won't track mud on your carpet. They'll ask you about your day. They introduce themselves. Give it all so they know. And as long as you only tell the truth, this compounds across your business because it builds your brand. It helps set proper expectations, which is a part of your onboarding. It helps build deeper levels of trust, which helps with sales, whether you're doing an upsell or a downsell. And it just facilitates an easier ride through any transition that you're going to have along the way with your customers. And honestly, today, flatulent puffery is what you get. It is why your fast food burger of choice is a greased up box under a heat lamp instead of the Picasso version that you see on the television. Now, I personally feel like we have steered away from substantive truth, but I do think that AI is going to help us get back to that, especially if we continue to have the standards set by people like Grant Cardone, Alex and Layla, Cody Sanchez, Rory Sutherland, Neil Patel, and all of the other guys and girls who are doing phenomenal things. Because in a time where convictions based on misinformation is the norm, and the ability to think is the rare trait, being trusted and having real proof that you do what you say is the way to win. But that's my opinion. So the fix for this, the proof machine. And so this is going to look like you deliver, you relentlessly capture the story and distribute it. So you put it everywhere so people can see it, so they know. Social medias, your Google business profile, everywhere you can. Let everybody see it because nobody knows that you exist. Get a 5-star Google review on site. Write your text a script. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, have we made you happy today? Listen, if you have 30 seconds, we'd really appreciate it if we could take a quick video. Just tell us about the trade and what you had done and what you thought of the services. It might not seem like a lot, but it would really help us out. It'll help us build a stronger community as well. And it doesn't have to be fancy, right? Raw is better than polished. And if they say no, then at least just give them or have the QR code or whatever you need to be able to give them something immediately so they can get to the review. So that way they can write a review, because they might absolutely not want to take any kind of video. But that doesn't mean they're not willing to leave you a 5-star review if they have the way to do it. But if you don't give them the way to do it, then they may not be willing to go out of their way to Google your business and go to the Google profile and all that great stuff. Nor should we expect them to. That is why it's our job. We're supposed to facilitate. We're supposed to make it as easy as possible for them to do everything they can to help us and make it to where they have the greatest experience as possible so that they want to. Then you deploy that proof everywhere. Your proposal PDFs, on your estimates, on your social media channels, you put it in your ads, everywhere you can, put it there. Put it on your trucks, put it up, hang up photos on your office walls. Depending on how aggressive you want to be, you can mail it to their neighbors. Be like, hey man, their fence looks way better now. Way better than yours. We could probably fix that for you though. Maybe don't do that. You might piss them off. But maybe it'll work. You don't know, right? Just depends on you. How aggressive do you want to be with it? Results may vary. Now, proof must be captured in the moment of excitement, before it's gone. And this is important because proof reduces perceived risk, and that builds your trust and authority. That's what we're aiming for. Now we're at number 5, the retention constraint. You treat customers like one and done transactions. You don't track the lifetime value. You don't build continuity programs. You don't engineer referrals, and you don't follow up with them. And all of those things hurt you right in the churn. And that's what's happening. You have a high churn rate. If you have a retention issue, that's what retention is. It's your churn. It's how many are you losing? And all of those things compound to it. So it could show up like they get the job and then it's done. You never hear from them again. There's never anything forward from that point. Very few service agreements, and referrals seem to happen randomly instead of by design. Retention issues. So that doesn't mean that you don't got happy customers. You just don't have structured follow-up. You don't have an engineered referral system. You don't have a continuity path. Now, we've talked about some of this earlier, specifically with the money model concepts, right? But upsell, continuity, and follow-up are the highest ROI activities in business. So if you're not doing those things, you're just kicking yourself in the shin and probably wondering why it hurts. So install simple continuity plans and referral asks. That's the fix. HVAC tune-ups, plumbing checks, panel GFCI inspections, those are examples of continuities. Roof visual checks, fence and paint inspections, or seasonal lawn check-ins. Human touches matter, so handwritten thank you cards, customer appreciation contests, best lawn on the block awards. These create emotional loyalty, and humans want to feel seen. Then ask for referrals at peak happiness. After a new system is installed, a new roof is finished, a new fence is built, you name it, ask for the referrals. You hit the reviews, and then you say, because you need to really do both of them. If you say, right, you get the 30-second, hey, fantastic, thank you so much. And then you say, who would you tell about this? There are 3 to 5 people that you would tell that they probably need this. If you were me, who's the first neighbor that you'd point this out to? Because you got to ask. And the same line of that, you could give a small referral incentive, right, and a card so they have it, or a link so they can get to it. Say, hey, you give it to them and you get XYZ. Most contractors never ask, and that's why referrals lag. And in whatever business you have, find the activation points that predict long-term relationships with the customers, whether it's joining a maintenance plan or just repeat interactions, and do those. So keeping customers and asking intentionally for referrals equals more revenue for your business with less spend. You don't have to pay to get those guys. And to drive that home, there are 2 industry benchmarks. I think one is from an Impact.com performance analysis. And these numbers, referrals account for 65% of all new business opportunities in service industries. That's you guys. In a solar study, in 56% of consumers who do not participate in referral programs, 60% of them claimed that they had never received a referral link, direct code, or QR from the brand or someone they knew. And 86% of consumers say that recommendations and reviews impact their decision making. So be intentional, be proactive with your referrals, sell continuity, and talk to your customers. Number 6, the capacity constraint. This is going to be the operations. And so that just means that your operations can't scale. If your leads doubled tomorrow, your systems would break. Your service quality would drop. You would lose jobs because of inconsistency and chaos. But that wouldn't be a lack of demand. So if the founder does quoting, dispatch, hiring, customer service because they have to, not because they want to, but they don't have a choice, they need to, that's a sign. Extra trucks sit idle due to lack of skilled crews. Jobs slow down because the team can't handle the volume. So words from organizational psychologists and recruiters would be the biggest differentiation in service businesses is people and process. Marketing can bring leads, sales can close them, but execution is what keeps customers. So the fix is pods for trades, and that means you design a repeatable, profitable crew pod, and then you clone it. And so in HVAC, plumbing, or electric, that might look like 1 lead tech, 1 helper or an apprentice, and then a shared CSR dispatcher. That's your pod. And then you get those guys to a point where they're profitable, and you clone it. Inside of a roofing or landscaping, you might have 1 foreman, 2 to 4 laborers, and then a shared project manager or estimator. So the steps here to run up the capacity would be run the jobs with your best crews, document everything that they do, exactly how they do it. Create checklists for their arrival, for their diagnosis, for their install, for their cleanup, taking photos, their upsells, and the review and referrals. Train and record the standard way. Then you will demonstrate that. When you bring on your second pod, you will show them the way that your all-star team did it. You'll give them those SOPs and checklists, and you train them, you demonstrate it, you let them watch it, you teach it, you teach that pod. And then you will delegate it. You will step away and let that pod do that themselves so that they become the same as your all-star team. And you give the pod clear targets: the daily revenue, the job count, the customer satisfaction score that you're aiming to get, a number of reviews or referrals. You set those very clearly. And with hiring, it is standard practice that processes and clear expectations create predictable outcomes. So onboard your employees. Invest in training, feedback loops, incentive structures, and performance standards. Now, from that $100 million Money Models books that I mentioned earlier, Alex notes in there that when the money model starts working, operations break first. So if you start winning on any of those other constraints that you ran into, you will eventually reach a point where capacity is the issue. Because that's the nature of business, right? You have supply and demand. If you get to the point where you have too much demand and your supply can't match it, then you have your capacity constraint and you will have to fix these things. And if you don't, you will either stay where you are or you will try to scale anyway, and then you will significantly damage your business because your reputation will collapse when you start to slip on performance. So you make one pod reliable, you clone it, and only once that pod runs without you or the other pod are you ready to pour more leads on it. And then if they can handle 10, right, 10 customers, 10 jobs, and that's one pod, and you want to do 50 jobs, then you need to get 5 pods. And now you know how to do it. So recruiting and managing people with clear systems turns chaotic growth into real scale. So if you're in HVAC, plumbing, electrical, landscaping, fencing, painting, floor, any of those, and you are running into an issue in your growth, it's almost always one of these 6 constraints. Now, I hope that some of this was useful. Use it. I hope that it helps. My name is Lucas, and if you're an HVAC owner with 2+ techs and room for 15+ kept service calls within the next 30 days, you can book a call with me at luciancreative.com. Now, I could make all of the content dynamic and really engaging, but I've set up my office in a way that I could do a simple shoot because the information is primarily educational. So that way I can give away the gold and spend less time on fancy editing. That being said, LHS trade owners, if you guys have a preference and you want more graphics or you want more visuals or you want different kinds of subtitles, captions, whatever preferences you guys have to make this easier to consume and more useful to you, please let me know in the comments or however you're speaking to me, because I'm making this for you guys.